I'm Narelle Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
We wanted to talk to you today about triggers. So in writing, there are going to be times when you will be referencing, or in someone's backstory, there's going to be things which may trigger people. And we just wanted to, I guess, shine a light on what triggers are. How should we handle triggers, and how do we actually write about triggers in a respectful way? So that's where we want to take our podcast today. So Susan, what do you think a trigger is? How would you define a trigger for those who haven't heard the term?
Probably not. One of the things I would do is actually look up the technical definition of it and then go from there. But for me, it's anything that I read that might be a button pusher, something that may have happened in my life that may trigger a memory or a situation that I've been in, or a fear. I know some people are like deathly terrified of frogs. And
Yes.
So if that's a trigger, you may want to put in that you've got zombie frogs throughout your story. But, on a more serious side, it's something that could trigger a negative reaction in a person. So you want to make sure that, and if it's something that you're worried about or even have a little kind of concern about, you may want to make sure that you put like a little note in there so that people are aware of it before they get halfway into the story. And the reason why it's such a big thing for me is I've actually been in a couple of movies where we got like halfway through the movie and a scene came up, and I actually walked out of the movies and I sat outside the theater because I could not go back in and watch it.
Yeah.
And one of those, child abuse is really a big thing for me, especially the really horrendous kind. And we were watching Slumdog Millionaire, and there was a scene in it where they were actually removing the eyes of this young child. Yeah.
Oh,
and when they did that, and I'm talking, this was probably, 10, 15 years ago, whenever the movie first came out. This long ago, I still have nightmares about that scene. So it was such a strong emotional reaction for me that I had to leave the movie theater, sit outside, and, Steve watched the rest of it while I couldn't. So, it's one of those things that if I'd have known, I would not have gone. I would have known I need to go see a different movie. I cannot watch this one. This one, I'm just too vivid a person, my imagination.
Yeah. And triggers typically, or when we typically think of triggers, it tends to be things around violence, abuse. So physical violence, sexual violence, abuse. And it's a way of letting people know that there's something in this story that may trigger a bad memory, a bad experience, impact mental health, is really the purpose, I think, of letting people know about a trigger. And of course, the challenge with that is knowing what to call a trigger, because there potentially can be so many things that can trigger at any one individual.
And you may not even, as an author, be aware of it.
Yes, yeah. And there's also, I think, the idea of, for some people, say, reading stories or stories that contain, say, human trafficking, that can be a trigger. And some people will say, well, I don't want that in my fiction. And other people will say, well, this is a reality, and we need to, make it more aware, make people more aware, so that something, we can work towards ending this horrific practice. So I think you've got two camps who are like going, I want my fiction without, we all live in the real world, and we read fiction potentially to escape from that. So there's that escape component, as to those who are saying, well, we need to incorporate some real world stuff in our stories, because that makes the story, richer and fuller, because it is reflective of society. So I think triggers is I think it's they're necessary to have, but at the same time, a warning. I mean, if you've got triggers in your book, and at the same time, it's then finding that fine line between, well, is this trigger or is what triggers people? Because there'll be different things for different. Yeah. So,
And that's one of the things is if it, as an author, if I'm writing a scene and it even slightly occurs to me that this could be a trigger to somebody, then I know maybe that's something that's going to tell me I need to put something in here.
Yeah.
And, or I need to tone that scene down if it's, too graphic or too, if it affects me as badly as that, I need to make sure that I put down that, hey, here's a warning, just so that you know.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess go find out and see what's out there for the official version of what a trigger is, and then just consider what is a trigger for you. What's the line as a writer that you're prepared to go to, and then after that is things that you would start to say, I would want to make mention that these things are in my story.
And, let me clarify something. You also need to make sure if you're writing for shock value or anything else, that you stay within the terms of service, because some things, maybe not just a trigger, it may violate whatever distributor's terms of service. So, there's certain limitations, and you need to think of the audience and society as a whole. What are you writing? And not just put it out there. You need to be conscious of what you're doing. You have a conscious responsibility as an author to what you're putting out into society. Because I know there's a lot of really dark stuff out there. And, I think everyone's read, something like Stephen King, where they've had nightmares and stuff like that. But, his usually, if you're reading his, you can almost certain that there's going to be a trigger in there somewhere. But, just be aware of it and, follow up, know the definition of it, know what the different distributors' definitions may be of it.
Yes.
So that you can be transparent with your readers.
Yeah. And, that's a really good point that leads into a point around, with triggers, it's important to maintain respect, and dignity within your writing. So I think you need to look at it also as, are you including triggers as a way to get more sales, or is it there to actually enhance the storyline? I've been reading some stories and I'm just like going, they've just added this stuff in, I'm sure, just to make it salacious, and because it didn't actually enhance the story, but it was more about
the shock value.
The shock value, yes. And I had read one book, and at the end, it was kind of borderline. So I made it to the end. And then at the end, the author was promoting the second book. And actually, she had in it a trigger warning for the second book at the end of the first book. And, there's more triggers in the second book. So, make sure you read the trigger page before you read the book. And I was like going, oh. And I went, oh, I think that was actually a marketing tactic.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I watched the marketing then for that second book, and the author was actually using that trigger, that trigger phrase she had in her marketing. So it was a meme. I was going, she's actually taken something. I personally think she crossed a line by using the trigger as a way to draw in people.
It's reverse psychology. If you're a parent, if you got to teach them the birds and the bees when they hit that, magic age, you put the book on the shelf and tell them, don't go look at any of the books on the bookshelf. And I guarantee you, they're going to not only go look, they're going to find the book that you wanted them to find, but you told them you didn't want them to find. Yes. So it's just that reverse psychology type thing. And again, it's like knowing why you're doing it. And, for me, I have to look in the mirror every day. So I want to make sure that I'm being moral and ethical and transparent with my readers. But, if that's the way you want to make money or the way you think your marketing should go, then that's up to you. That could be my trigger.
Yes.
When it comes to certain areas, and a line that I won't cross, but that line changes for different people. Yes. And so when I write a story, if I have something in it, like the current story that I'm writing right now, I'm going back and forth because there is a very emotional part that's in it that could be a trigger for some people. But this is it's such an integral part of the story, and it develops, it makes the character who they are. And in my last book that I just released, The Dark Princess Prize, I also had that dilemma where it was a very dysfunctional family, and there was some bad things that the family member, certain family members were doing that didn't sit well. And I think, we've all probably could look at our family tree and find, one of those relatives that was very close to, the characters in my book and had done something like that. And so, it could have been a trigger to some people. And perhaps I should have put a thing that there was a very dysfunctional family relationship in this book. And it doesn't mean that you don't love the family member. It just means that they've made a lot of poor life choice decisions.
Yeah.
In it. And so I didn't put a trigger warning because we've all known people that are like that, and it's part of a storyline. But in the case of the story that I'm writing now, as a young girl, she witnessed something that affected her, and then her father was not the best dad in the world. So if you had a poor family relationship with your father, this could be a trigger for that.
Yeah. I think it's important to know what you're using the trigger for, and accepting that. And I think that comes down to the values of each author. So if you're using it as part of the story, then that works within the story, and it would work within your own value system. If you're using it as a way, triggers as a way to make more sales, and if that once again sits with you, it fits in with your value system, then that is how, and this is how the person I was saying about before, I actually came to realize that she was actually using that. But it's also made sense from a marketing point of view because her readers obviously were attracted to darker material, and she was just letting them know there's darker material. So it was smart marketing. Is it the best for society? I would question that. I don't think it is. I think there's enough dark in the world. We don't need more, but that's my personal opinion. So I think you just need to be aware of why you're doing it. Does it sit well with you? And that's your decision, and go from there. But it's a real hard one.
Well, that's what I love about, the character that I'm writing right now is she recognizes and she overcame these challenges that she has faced in her life. And I love seeing that growth, that evolution in her. I think that's one of the things with my writing. Each write a different thing. I know some people, like I said, they love horror. Me, no. I'll have nightmares forever. I watched Bonnie and Clyde, with the original Bonnie and Clyde, at the drive-in movie theaters when it first came out, with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. And oh my God, I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Oh. I mean, and that's again something you don't forget. So it all depends on what you're looking for. Just be conscious of your readers and who your potential readers are, and be transparent with them, because while you may be looking for shock value, you don't want to cause a negative one that is going to turn off people. So just be open and honest when you're doing your writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there was what do we do with these trigger warnings? Should we put them in the blurb? What's your viewpoint on that? Where should we put them? Just the blurb? Other places?
Well, the good thing about having them in the blurb, and maybe even in the front part, of on the copyright page or somewhere in there, you may want to have, if especially if it's a traumatic one, you may want to put something down below, in asterisks, letting them know trigger and then what it is, so that they can make that conscious choice. Do I want to take a chance on this book? Or, hey, I wonder how they're going to handle this specific situation, because it doesn't always have to be, a turnoff. It could be, way of saying, hey, I've got this, and readers are wanting to know, oh, you know what, I went through this, I wonder how they handled it. Oh my God, I've learned something new.
Yeah.
So there's always that possibility. But I do think that if it's something very loud and clear that, hey, there is something here, that you should at least let readers know, and then they can make that conscious, informed decision. I think that's the big thing. They can make an informed decision as to whether or not this book is for them.
Does it need to be explicit, or is it more just, say, like if we think of movies, they will have their thing is in there is like violence. It doesn't actually say what kind of violence or what level or degree. You kind of,
well, they literally say,
maybe by the rating of the movie,
you may want to use that as a guideline. There's enough material out there that they do have the guidelines. So you can say it's MA for mature audiences, and in parentheses, it's got, a violence, death. Some people, maybe if they just lost a loved one and your story has the death of a loved one in it, it could be a trigger. So, maybe even just put, what the movie industry has down there if you're not sure, so that people can make that informed decision. And I think that's actually a good idea, for all of it, because some may not be wanting violence right now. Maybe they just went through a bad situation and they're like, oh, I can't handle that right now. I know there's times where we go to watch a movie and I'm like, okay, we are watching cartoons tonight, baby, because I'm like, I am done and over. I can't take anything else. I need something that's totally mindless.
Yes, that's true. Like with our books, there will be times where we want something maybe a bit heavier, and other times like fluffy,
sweet, sci-fi, totally out there. No way it could be real, compared to having, contemporary police shoot 'em up or have a sci-fi shoot 'em up. If you give me the two when I'm having a bad day, give me the sci-fi, because I know it's like out in space and not happening.
Yes, not real. Yeah. Well, we hope that our discussion around triggers has triggered something for you in how you would approach, triggers, should they be in your writing and in your stories. So go find out what triggers means for you. Just get really clear on that. And, Susan said, just be open and honest with your readers about any triggers that may be in your stories, and then they can make their own decisions about whether they read your book or not.
I love the pun.
Okay, thanks everyone. See ya.
Bye everyone.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. We've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.